No, it's going. All right. Guess what? We get to do the whole thing all over again. We had a dry run. We had to practice. All right. Focused. I'm so good, too. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Ellie Campbell, and I'm here with one of my favorite patients to tell a story that I hope makes sense to you and can help you and your family. So, as we know, lifestyle changes are the most important thing when it comes to affecting your health. If you have symptoms, lifestyle changes needs to be the very first thing that you do, including better sleep, better exercise, and better food. Many of the foods that we eat today are inflammatory triggers for chronic inflammatory diseases. And so we have a family today that was dramatically affected by food, and they didn't know it. So I'm going to have Cortez tell our story today. We'll start with her daughter, and we're going to see what the trickle down was for the rest of her family. So why don't you tell me what happened to your daughter?
So for some time now, she's been suffering from joint pain, leg pain. And when I take her to a pediatrician, they said, oh, she's growing, it's growing pains, it's normal. Maybe fix her while she's sleeping, put a pillow in between her knees, help, rub, she'll get through this. And then one day, last year in September, for 2-3 days, she couldn't walk, to the point that she couldn't get out of bed. She couldn't walk down the stairs, she couldn't walk to her classroom. So,
as a parent, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Your kid can't walk.
She went from gymnastics to I can't walk.
And so you took her to the emergency room?
Yes.
And what did they do there?
They did blood tests and x-rays, and they said she's got extreme inflammation in her joints, she's got arthritis, and I think it's rheumatoid arthritis, and you need to take her to a specialist. And there's one specialist in Atlanta that couldn't get us in.
That's pediatric rheumatology, so
Yeah.
it's an unusual condition. And so we took her back to the pediatrician and said, what can you do? It's months before I can get in to see the specialist. What can the pediatrician do to help you?
She said, give her ibuprofen every single day for the pain.
Around the clock, ibuprofen,
Yes.
whether she thinks she needs it or not, to
Yeah.
try to knock down the inflammation. Anything else was offered?
Nothing, just wait.
And so we had 3 or 4 months before we could get an appointment. And in the meantime, he said, well, maybe Dr. Campbell can help. And I said, well, I've seen this before. My niece was suffering from a very similar condition. She lives in Chicago. And same story, emergency room, primary care doctor, sent to the rheumatologist. The rheumatologist there said, I've been seeing far too many of these cases. I think it has something to do with the food. So I'm going to tell your daughter to go on an elimination diet. This rheumatologist wasn't privy to the tests that we do in our functional medicine practice, but elimination diet, see if we can make you better. Well, within a week of the elimination diet, Jillian's pain was gone. And it turned out that her 2 biggest triggers were malt, which was an Ovaltine, a drink she had every morning, and gluten. And when Jillian is strict about her diet and stays off her gluten and her malt, her pain is dramatically better. No need for daily aspirin, no need for daily ibuprofen. So I knew that story, and I've seen this before. So your daughter came to have her blood test, and we did an IgG, food sensitivity blood test. And what did it show?
It listed everything that she's sensitive to, and it gives you stars. This is 1 and this is 3. And everything was on there, especially dairy and gluten. To the point, milk, yogurts, egg yolks, she can have egg whites, but not the yellow. And then everything she was eating, she would eat cereal, she'd eat waffles, she'd eat eggs. Everything that I was giving her was terrible.
Because here we are following the guidelines of the best evidence in our country, and it says, feed your kid milk and dairy. They need several servings a day. Feed them whole grains, including gluten. And for your daughter, these were toxic foods. They were inflammatory triggers. So you had a very hard thing to do. You had to go home to your family and say, we're going on a gluten-free, dairy-free quest. And so that meant to what in your household?
And I had to research because I didn't know what gluten was in. So once I went in and studied all this stuff, and I cleaned house, I gave away food, and we started fresh, and it was very hard at first teaching my husband and the kids what this meant, and not being able to eat out as much, understanding what we could order, but within a couple weeks, her pain went away. And
no pain?
No pain. Still no pain.
No ibuprofen?
Nothing. Nothing. She's in gymnastics again. She's the same daughter I had.
Awesome. And And something else happened that was unexpected. You have a son that has asthma,
Yes.
and pretty severe asthma.
Right.
He has a nebulizer at home because he had emergency room visits for
Yes.
asthma.
Oh yeah, 2 a.m.
Yeah. So
Inhaler.
2 a.m, run into the emergency room, my kid can't breathe, terrifying.
Yes.
So what happened when Jaden accidentally went on this gluten-free, dairy-free diet because he was born in the same family, and
Right.
now we're following the same food plan for everybody.
The same with him. This was the first winter. I didn't have to do an inhaler. I never did a breathing machine, and now seasonal allergies are barely bothering him. And he can play sports and run and not be wheezing.
So we emptied his inflammatory bucket.
Yeah.
So gluten and dairy were obviously triggers for him as well.
Right.
Pollen is still a trigger, but with fewer toxins in the bucket, his system can handle
Right.
those seasonal toxins with less side effect. So in my experience, we've seen gluten and dairy be very common triggers for every inflammatory organ. We've seen gluten trigger eczema and psoriasis. We've seen dairy trigger allergies and asthma. We've seen rheumatoid conditions vaporize. We've seen psoriatic arthritis improve. We've seen ADHD go away, all from the inflammatory triggers of certain foods. It's not gluten and dairy for everybody. Sometimes it's cashews and coffee. Sometimes it's broccoli and oatmeal.
Right.
Sometimes it's gluten and dairy are very common, but they're not the only one. So our experience has shown us that by doing a 96-panel food test, which runs about $195, it's not a cheap test. Insurance isn't typically covering it, which is a tragedy in my opinion, because how much money have you saved your insurance company by not having a rheumatology workup, not sending her through all those tests and treatments, not having any emergency room visits,
Right.
not buying
Right.
inhalers,
Right.
right? It's huge cost savings. Until now, though, it's still not covered, so it's a cash outlay expense, but it can change your life, it can change your family, and more importantly, it can give you a healthy, robust children that don't require chronic daily medication.
Exactly.
So
So thank you. We love you. Thank you for saving her. Thank you.
you're welcome.